action relating to items removed from the consent agenda. Item E, request to approve professional transportation services contract with the Metropolitan Tulsa Transit Authority for fiscal year 2021 at a cost of $27,152,000 for transportation services rendered, and authorize the city manager to execute the same. Councilor Dyke, what was your question?
My question was, it's listed on the letter that they sent to City Planner Shrout. That was the $27,152, but in the contract for the cost of service, it's actually greater at $28,510. And I didn't realize this till later, and I texted late, but wanted to see if there was a reason for the discrepancy or it just hadn't been updated in their contract.
Great question. Mr. Sauceda or Mr. Shrout?
Yes. So last year, they sent us this same letter where they were projecting or requesting a 5% increase. So going from 27,152 to the 28,510. So they also called for changes in the routes within the city of Jenks, and where they were going to kind of bypass the aquarium and stop at Tulsa Tech and kind of merge some of the routes. So what ended up happening was there was a consolidation in the route within the city, and that negated the need to increase the annual subsidy. So we stayed at $27,152. So in updating the contract for this year, for this coming year, since there wasn't a fee increase, I think the person at Tulsa Tech or at Tulsa Transit, Mr. Ted, he didn't update the contract, but the fee is $27,152.
And when I exit the contract, I'll just change that number.
Okay, great. I just didn't know if you guys had noticed that. So I don't know if we're supposed to point out those details or not. So wanted to make you knew.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
all right, great question. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve item E of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. Item 3, request to approve TUP 2044, a request by Melissa Torkelson for a temporary use permit to allow for the retail sale of fireworks. The general location is the northeast corner of 106th Street South and South Elm. Ms. Hilton. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. This item is, from what I understand, the annual fundraiser for the Jenks Band. Melissa Torkelson is representing it as Big Blast. The Planning Commission heard this item on May 7th at the regularly scheduled meeting. They did vote 7-0-0 to approve with 2 conditions. One of them is to allow for 2 dates, which would require a waiver of the code section 8-3-3A4, and I'll get to that in just a minute, and then I'll get to that. So the general location is 106th and Elm. It's on that northeast corner there. Just before the Planning Commission meeting, one of my planning commissioners reached out and brought to my attention this section that I just mentioned, 8-3-3. And that is, I'll read it to you. If you look on page 29 and you're following along on the general agenda or page 2 of the staff report, it says that City Code limits the sales to the summer season, and Planning Commission and staff recommend 2 waivers to the council. So the first waiver would be the dust-free surface. In this case, there are some large areas that do have paving, but it wouldn't be all of it. So they do show some parking on the grass, but also parking on the other surfaces. And then that waiver allowing them to sell over the New Year holiday. And I did talk with staff and was told that this has been the general practice, and Planning Commission was willing to recommend approval of that. If you continue on page 2, it kind of just gives you the general outline of what a temporary use permit is. I know we've approved a couple of these, and this is part of what we're going to be discussing moving forward with the update of the zoning code. Again, there's some things highlighted on page 3. This is actually a temporary use permit intensive. So there's 2 different categories, and intensive is what's required in order to get a fireworks stand approved. On page 4 of the staff report, or 31 of the overall agenda, it shows the city council considerations. And then I also copied and pasted for your convenience that excerpt that I'm talking about on the sales of fireworks being regulated to just the summertime season. If you continue looking on page 5, or you can also say page 32, it shows a little map with the zoning in that area. So the recommendation is approve the temporary use permit intensive to allow for the sale of fireworks on 2 separate dates. Those dates would be June 15th through July the 5th and December 27th through January 1st. Also waiving the dust-free parking and meeting the requirements of 19.02, 19.2, which is the temporary use minimum zoning regulations, including requiring someone to be there 24 hours a day, access to restroom facilities, and provide screening of the trash receptacles and storage. We did have a conversation at the Planning Commission about the screening of that. There's also an RV, which you'll see in the application, that shows where they'll have an area that'll be air conditioned and probably heated for the different salespeople. If you continue looking on page 6, it shows just an aerial shot of that location, and I think most of you are familiar with it. Page 7 or 34 of the agenda shows the intersection there. And it's on page, on page 36, you start looking at the actual application. So the actual site plan that they submitted is on page 41 of 176 in the agenda, and it shows a large area. They have 2 storage areas, an RV, then the band truck, which they've got up kind of towards the front, and then 3 rows of parking. At this time, I don't have any other considerations or recommendations, but just acknowledging that they wanted to do the 2 different dates, and that does violate the code, but Planning Commission has recommended waiving that code violation and allowing them to sell, at least for this year, because I did talk to the consultants on updating the code, and that process from the time we start will take about a year. So we'll probably have this conversation before we get to the end of the code update in order to be prepared for next fireworks season. Again, so go ahead.
No, I seem to recall last year there was some discussion about where one of the trucks was parked, that it was, if it was too close to the road or something. Am I foggy on that, or does anybody else remember that?
Planning Commission mentioned the same thing, Councilor Murray. And I believe Melissa is available to speak to you on that. And the truck that they talked about is that band truck, but I believe they also like to use it for advertising as
Right.
well as storage. So they do have it a little bit close to the road, but it is behind the tent also. So there shouldn't be any distraction for traffic.
Yeah, I didn't think we necessarily had a problem with it, but I just remember some discussion about it. I just wanted to make sure that we're all understood the clarity of what was kind of discussed, so that we don't have to worry about it again.
Yeah, and I've since heard from someone involved with Jenks Band who mentioned that they wish that the truck were located or were positioned differently. Is in this application, is it where they want it to be?
I believe Melissa has placed it on the actual on page 41, the site plan. She can speak to you, but she did comment that is where they preferred it, I believe.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, Ms. Hilton. Thank you. This is Melissa Torkelson.
I'm Melissa, welcome.
I didn't know if you wanted. Hi, thank you. I just wanted to bring some clarification. Yes, that site plan as we submitted it is what we seek to do. Of course, that's what the Planning Commission approved. And there was some discussion on that page 41, well, I can't recall which page you said the site plan was on. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me. You can vaguely see there's one single tree on the lot that we literally sit on the east side of that tree. So we don't go over, does that make sense? We don't migrate closer to Elm Street. It is on the east side. I had assured the Planning Commission that, after some discussions about moving the box truck, I would not be opposed to that, but I wanted to let them know that for aesthetic purposes, that box truck is probably the most beautiful thing out of the other three things behind the tent that are currently there. So we have two containers, which a container is a container, and
Sure.
then the band's RV. So if we needed to move that a little more east, we could, but we have made a concerted effort over the last few years to keep that behind the tent and keep it to the east of that tree. So it's well off of the bike path and well off of Elm Street. So you can kind of see vaguely that tree, and that's really where the box truck kind of nestles itself by, hiding everything that's to the east of that, which are those other three pieces that you see on your site plan. And I also wanted just to mention, I'm glad that we're updating the code. We have set up since 2012, I think is what my file reminded me of when I looked at the last meeting, for the New Year's sales. And just to, we are more than willing to, just to clarify, for that New Year's sales, you're probably familiar, we don't set up a whole tent, it's a lot colder. So we set up a conventional stand. It's a 24-foot stand. So if we needed to submit a site plan for that, but it wouldn't be any different. But thinking back over the years, the consumer permits that are bought by residents, actually on that permit, every year that we have sold permits for the city of Jenks, it does specify on that permit as well that that permit is good for both selling seasons. So I'm just mentioning that, Ms. Hilton, just in case, hopefully, we're able to move forward with updating the code. But if the code doesn't allow for updating, you might just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that those permits have, since the beginning of selling in the city limits, have always allowed residents the opportunity to purchase that permit in the summer and also use it in the winter months, if that makes sense. So just to make that clarification on there as well. But I don't have any other questions or any other comments unless any of the counselors have questions in reference to the site plan. But yes, as we presented it and the Planning Commission has approved, we plan on moving forward with that direction unless there's some other input.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions or comments from council on this item?
No, sir.
No.
Nope. No.
All right, any motions to approve? Okay,
Second.
I'll second.
all right, let's vote.
Murray?
Yes.
Isbell? Yes. Fox?
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
OJ?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Barely.
Yes. All right, we will move on to item 4, request to approve ROW UEC 2073. Request by Shauna Norris for a utility easement closure to close a portion of the utility easement in her rear yard. The general location is 116 West 125th Court South. Ms. Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. This item is a utility easement closure. Ms. Norris was in the process of having a swimming pool designed and built for her home, and she lives in the Wakefield Crossing, Lot 3, Block 3. And I believe it was during the plot phase where they go in and kind of design it. They realized that in order to get the size and design that she wanted, it would require closing a portion of the utility easement. We oftentimes approve utility easement closures, and then more often than not, we do not approve utility easement closures. This one just happens to be one of those cases where there's nothing in that utility easement, so it from the city side. With that being said, this item went to the Technical Advisory Committee. PSO had us a fairly significant line there, and Ms. Norris has already gone through the process of having that line relocated. The staff report said that it was part of the recommendation that that had to be completed, and I do believe, and she can confirm, that that has already been done. At the May 7th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting, Planning Commission did vote to approve the utility easement closure. Out of the 17.5 feet, they are closing 7.5, which leaves approximately a 10-foot utility easement. The staff does not oppose this closure and will not oppose vacation at district court. We have comments in here. If you continue to look on page 2 or 48 of the staff report, it has a little blue arrow kind of showing you the utility easement area. You continue going, there's shows the utility easements on page 3, which is also page 49, and then just an aerial view. They've got the Plat survey and application. And then it actually shows you on page 56 kind of where the pool would be located. There's also included a letter from PSO stating that the payment has been received for the line relocate. And again, staff has no objection to this. And if it goes to Plat or utility easement vacation, we will not oppose that at district court.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on this item?
Is Ms. Norris on the line?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm just curious, was this the house that burnt down a few years ago and was rebuilt?
Yes, it was, Counselor.
Okay,
It was?
yes.
Okay, thank you. That was just curious question.
Okay. All right. Well, if there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve item number 5.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell? Yes. Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Fairley.
Yes. Item 5, request to approve ordinance number 1518 relating to ROW UEC 2073.
So moved.
Second.
All right, let's vote on that.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell? Yes. Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Fairley.
Yes. Item 6, request to approve emergency clause for ordinance number 1518, making it effective immediately upon passage.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell? Yes. Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Fairley.
Yes. Item 7, request to approve the preliminary plat for Tory Lakes from TEP. General location is south of 131st and West Harvard. Ms. Hilton, you again.
Here we go. Thank you very much. This item was part of a planned unit development. It was PUD 119. It was called Tory Lakes. It was approved by or recommended for approval by Planning Commission, and on April 27th, 2020, City Council did approve the planned unit development. At that time, there were a lot of questions, and we did a lot of reading of questions and answers. And in this case, the answers, no new questions have been asked since the previous PUD. So tonight, I will not be reading all of them if you are in agreement with that. With that being said, I'll kind of walk through it just for everyone's benefit and for the public. So this is a planned unit development that has approximately 140 homes shown on the plat. The PUD did allow for 155, but as presented, they can only get 140 lots. The zoning is RS1. It is a single family detached residential development. They have 2 park areas, and one of the big questions when approving the PUD, do the amenities justify the lot widths, et cetera, that they were asking for. And I do believe last week I sent out the updated planned unit development that gave all of those details. The applicant, Mr. Terrell, on behalf of Mr. Kozort, did include the photos that had been submitted in all the memo information. So there are 2 park areas. One's in the northeast corner, and it does have a pool with a playground, a a dock over the pond and a clubhouse. This item went to TAC on April 14th, and there were a couple of comments, nothing significant. So if you look at the staff report, starting on page 65 and page 3, it talks about public comment. And when we went through the PUD process, I made it very clear that all the drainage questions are very, very important. And there were questions about the oil wells that are shown, and it is my understanding from staff that there have been issues in other developments with oil wells and tanks and batteries. And so I wanted to make sure that I gave a thorough response to all of these questions. And I want to thank the city engineer, Mr. Robinson, because he spent a lot of time going through every question and answering them. And if you read them closely, you'll see the difference between a planner explanation and an engineer explanation. There's a little bit of difference. So at the top of that, it kind of just has a little legend which walks you through what some of the initials are, so I didn't have to repeat myself over and over. At this time, I would say just overall, and just as a reminder, you cannot have adverse impact on a project. So the engineers of record and the professionals go through all of the due diligence to get that information. They do all the drainage studies, and at the end of the day, they they can show that they are not causing adverse impact. On page 4 of the staff report, which is also page 66, it talks about all the different reviewers, and I listed these plats go to the technical advisory committee, the Jenks development staff, city engineers, building inspections, fire and public safety, other state and local governing entities, and consultants as needed. And upon review, staff makes their recommendations to the planning commission, which then comes to you all at the preliminary plat level. And as you know, a lot of times, if it's one lot, one block, they'll go ahead and come as preliminary and final at the same time, which is not the case. We're just discussing the preliminary plat tonight. So halfway down the page is where I make the statement about unlawful adverse impact. If you keep going, continues to talk about the different ponds. And just as a public FYI, if you ever have, for instance, in this case, there was a pond and the dam broke and there was severe drainage onto a property which could have ultimately had a very adverse impact. Feel free to call the city anytime, or even better, go online and complete a report for code enforcement to look into that. And in this case, staff was not notified when the dam broke until after the work had been done. So page 7 kind of starts talking about the environmental due diligence, and our code actually has a lot of language and requirements. So I'll make sure as we get to the final plat phase that all of these are included. It talks about tanks specifically on page 8. You continue to look, it talks about the building setback can be determined when you're talking about oil and gas wells, whether they're plugged, I believe, or active. Let's see, I'll read it to you. In section 3.9, oil and gas wells, where there is found to be a producing oil or gas well, which is in or nearby the proposed subdivision or an abandoned one, so it's both, it can either be active or abandoned, which is not adequately plugged according to the standards established by state and Oklahoma Corporation Commission, a building setback line as determined by the Planning Commission and City Council shall be shown. So it would be incumbent upon the developer and to prove that it was done correctly through the Corporation Commission. Otherwise, the Planning Commission and City Council have the right per our code to set that distance boundary. Let's see, on page 8 down at the bottom, kind of reiterates that. Then page 9, or which is also page 71, if you're following on the overall agenda, it talks about more information on the environmental side. Page 10 or 72 talks about the different, let's see. Mr. Robinson says we do verify well locations during plan review and to make sure they will not be placed under homes or in conflict with proposed infrastructure. And I believe all the ones that are represented on the plat today are not on a lot per se. So on page 11, it says, staff received many concerns, including but not limited to stormwater, abandoned oil wells, batteries, and tanks. The Public Planning Commission and City Council questions have been presented previously in the PUD process, and then now everything that had to do with the plat have been included in this document and have been available online for the Planning Commission hearing and for the City Council hearing. With that being said, TAC and staff believe that with everything done, when you see the final plat, it will meet the standards of the City of Jenks zoning code and subdivision regs, and it is in harmony with the surrounding areas and the planned unit development, and we do recommend approval at this time. If you continue to look, and I'm almost done. Page 76 of the report shows just kind of it's called the Jenks Preliminary Plat Memo, and I wanted to send that out to kind of just show this is straight from the code, and it shows what I look for when I'm reviewing a plat. And as you can see, it's very basic. I'm looking, is the name and address on the face of the plat? Is the date and symbology there? What about the location map, etc.? So that was included for the public's benefit, but also for the Planning Commission and City Council, just so that you have an idea when I sit down and review the information that I'm looking for. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Mr. Tim Terrell is also available, who's the applicant on behalf of Cozort Homes, and I believe Russell Cozort is also available.
Thank you. Any questions from council on this?
I'll go ahead and start since I was the vocal one a little bit on the last time about this.
Sure.
I appreciate, Ms. Hilton, all the information you put in there, and you addressed, I think, most of the concerns that I saw, which I appreciate a lot. One of the concerns, and again, to readdress, that came from one of the constituents that lives just north of there, is about the pool and the distance of the 50 feet and the easement, and then 100 feet, 150 feet rather, from that northeast corner. And my question had brought up is, there's a pool that's going to be in Providence Hills already that's going to be almost directly adjacent to this pool. That the Reserve D, if you look on page 75, why that could not be utilized as the park or the pool also. And I know it was a question about it being backed up to another neighborhood, but right now it's unplatted. So it would not be necessarily disturbing any other neighbors at that point. And if somebody wanted to come in as a developer and build, then they know going in there that there would be something like that. That's where I still have a concern with this.
And Counselor, but if you look at, I understand the Providence Hills there's potential concern, but if you look at the plat, and I'm looking at what page is this?
75?
75, I mean, the reserves match up. So the reserve in Torrey Lakes matches up with the reserve in Providence Hills. So it doesn't look like the reserve is really going to be, and there's even that 32 is in Torrey Lakes, and that's kind of a buffer. So I mean, you have Providence Hills homes that are already backing up to the pool area in Providence Hills, and so adding a reserve area here, I don't understand what the difference is between Reserve A related to Providence Hills homes as relates to Reserve B. There's already a pool in Reserve B in Providence Hills that backs up to those houses.
Right, but there's no pool or no houses that would be below Reserve D. And I was just looking at it from a standpoint that, and not that it would happen, but it could. You've got two pools and they decide to open at different times, then you've got issues of neighbors and HOAs that are saying, well, why are they opening before we do? Why are they closing different hours? Trying to address something before it happens, maybe. I'm just pointing it out. And that's a little of the concern that I would think I would have. And like I said, if they put it in Reserve D, if somebody decided to build a developer in that unplatted area, then they know going in, there's already a pool there. Somebody wants a house backed up to it, then that's on them. Right now, you've got people in Providence Hills who bought homes with nothing beside them, behind them, and whatever, and now a developer's coming in, which is great. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that in doing it, that I'm looking after the best interest of what's already in Providence Hills, as also what's coming into Torrey.
Yeah, that is a good point. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think any other information would probably have to come from the actual applicant as to their preference to the northeast corner or the south west. Tim, are you available?
You hear me, Marseille?
Yes.
Can hear you. Welcome.
Tim Terrell, Tulsa Engineering and Planning Associates, we're 9810 East 42nd Street, Suite 100. Reserve D doesn't work because most of it is a pond, a detention pond. There's no room for any amenities remotely like we're putting in Reserve A. That's why they're going in Reserve A. And Reserve A backs up to Providence Hills Reserve B. The lots that are closest to that Reserve A also back up to their own reserve. Someone's mentioned 150 feet. This pool will be a lot more than 150 feet away from anybody in Providence Hills' home. I don't think the hours is going to be an issue. Most pools will be open around the same time and close around the same time. I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. I think they're nice amenities. I think that the playground that we're proposing up there is going to be great, as well as the pool and the clubhouse and the dock over the pond. I don't think it's going to be exceedingly noisy, no more noisy than what Providence Hills is dealing with their own pool. And I guess they have a clubhouse there. And lake. So I think how we planned it as it is now seems to work, in my opinion. I'm a planner and I do this for a living, and to me it seems like it, from a drainage standpoint and letting the water get to, there's an existing pond there we're going to be improving and enlarging, and the dock will go over it as well for kind of a fishing pond. But just how the lay of the land is and where the drainage flows, that's where the ponds need to be in those two reserves, A and D. And D is mostly a detention pond, so there's just no room for it down there.
Hey, Tim.
Yes, sir.
Corey Box here, and I'm mostly sure, but I'm just literally reading black and white text. I'm fairly sure, and Marseille has said, and you've said that there will be a pool. Page 2 of this section, or page 64 of the actual packet, and I think this was typed up by Marseille, says that under amenities there will be a playground equipment and or a pool. But for sure there will be a pool as a primary amenity, correct?
Well, that was the original text. Yes, you're absolutely right. But that has been since amended by Planning Commission and City Council when the PUD was approved.
Okay.
And everything we submitted, as you saw the pictures of the lake and saw a picture of the pool house and a picture of the pool, mainly Dutcher's Crossing when it comes to the pool and pool house. That's what we've agreed to do, and actually even a larger playground than what was shown in the picture. So all that is you're absolutely correct. Those are promised and will be taken care of and will be done and installed.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It just didn't look like the and or on from the planner just maybe needed to be updated, but thank you for your.
Oh, no problem. I want to be clear. We'll make that very clear.
I have no more questions from Mr. Terrell and Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Marseille, correct me if I'm wrong. You stated earlier that there would be no oil wells on the lots or on the footings of the homes, because I see a couple of the wells that appear to be in a lot.
Sorry, the dog is barking and I can't do anything about it.
And Buddy's picking up on it.
They are on the lot lines as close as possible, and that will be noted during the permit. But I think, they've got 2 near the reserve area, 1 near block 3, lot 11 and 12. There's 2 right there. And then I saw another one. I marked them earlier. I can't remember.
Lot 28, block 3.
Yes.
And they're all within building line setbacks, so there's nothing's in the middle of a lot. Or some kind of easement. One's in a roadway, right of way, and anything in the lot was within a building line setback. So
Okay,
no one should ever go over those.
Right. I just wanted to clarify. I thought I heard earlier that there would be no wells on lots, but if they're on the property line and in the utility easement in the back, I'm okay with that. I do have one more question, and give me a second to find the note I made.
It's okay.
Let's see here. On page 69, it references the stormwater requirements require that post-construction runoff has to equal or be less than the pre-construction conditions. And I want to clarify, are the pre-construction conditions with both ponds, the one that the dam was removed, or is this just with the single pond at this point in time?
Or if you're asking me as the applicant, I don't know, I'll jump in here. If not, I mean, I apologize, but it's basically as it is in an undeveloped state as it exists today. And just a part of that one pond of the dam was breached, which was breached before this thing started, I guess, as far as my understanding. Yeah, it cannot be increased from more than it is right now.
Okay, I just wanted that clarification on the dam breach. But with respect to the engineering that has to be put in place and the city keeping an eye on that, and the requirement of the 500, the water retention for a 500-year event, I'm okay with that. I just wanted a clarification. Thank you.
Sure.
Great questions, Counselor. Anything else?
If I could, I'd like to ask Mr. Shrout or Mr. Robinson if they could give us a definition between preliminary plat and final plat for those listening.
Well, I think Marseille would be the one to answer that.
Preliminary is the initial draft, and that's where we go through, the engineer starts doing all their studies. They haven't fully completed their drainage. They usually have most of it completed, but they haven't got all their utilities and everything established, maybe where they want them. So there's a time frame. So they have the initial phase where they start and get the lots lined out, identify as they've done the oil things that have been taken care of, and then it goes to final plat. And at that time, that's where you're going to see, that's where we're going to go with the fine-tooth comb, make sure they've gotten all their PUD language in there and it's accurate, it's thorough.
What's the typical time between preliminary and final in your experience, Marseille?
It really depends on the project. A lot of the developers have all their ducks in a row and they can get the information. A lot of times projects get really held up with at the federal or the state level with the different departments, and sometimes with the Army Corps of Engineers on the drainage and things like that. So it really is, it just depends. Generally, like this one, I think will go pretty quick. They've done a lot of preliminary work. Some of them literally submit the preliminary plat and then they start they just get their lot layout and get that approved, and then they do the rest of it. So anywhere from probably not less than 3 or 4 months to a year.
Okay.
It could take longer, but they try to get it within 6 months.
Well, I didn't have this question, but now that I'm looking at it at the page, maybe it needs to be asked, given what's recently happened with Hickory Creek and the Army Corps of Engineers. You answered the question number 12 on page 68 that you said that, number 12 says this is done on the private side by the engineer of record and presented to the city with appropriate documentation. So can I assume that the city has been presented this appropriate documentation that you're referring to in item number 12, page 6 or page 68 of the packet?
I believe that Chris said that he starts getting that information during the earth change permit. When that earth change permit has been issued, there's a set of criteria that Chris requires from the applicant. And I believe earlier he states that that is part of the earth change permit.
So if Mr. Robinson's on the call, would you suspect that we probably won't have a similar issue here than what we just recently encountered in Hickory Creek?
No, the earth change permit does require them now to submit any correspondence with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, as well as proof of either exemption or that they were given a nationwide permit or an individual permit before we can approve the earth change permit.
Okay. Thank you.
To follow up on Councilor Murray's question about the pool, is there an idea, Marseille or Tim, about where on Reserve A the pool is going to be?
This is Tim. Okay.
I have
Closer
the
to
PUD pulled up.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I do have the PUD pulled up on my other laptop, and it does show that the detention pond is in the far northeast corner, and the amenities are on the west side of that. So the pool is on the west side of the pond.
Okay.
Closer to the road.
No, they'd be closer to the.
No, that would be closer to
Closer to the neighborhood.
I'm putting no,
32.
the road, the pool, as Marseille said, the actual pond is more in the northeastern corner,
Yes.
for lack of better term, kind of north central, northeast. Kind of where it's located now, but again, expanded. The pool will be west of that, between that
Yes.
pond and lot 32, closer to the road, which we're showing as east 136th Street.
Oh, closer to that road. Okay. We thought
Not Harvard, not
Yes.
Harvard.
I gotcha. Okay, so not a whole lot closer to, I'm looking at Providence Hills, lot 6 and 7. So not a whole lot closer to those lots than the pool that's in the northeast corner of Reserve B, Providence Hills.
I couldn't answer that. I don't know exactly where their pool is on the maps on the plans that I'm looking at. We don't show that, so I don't know how close it is. I do see where the existing pond is, but I don't really have a feel for how close their pool is to lot 6 and 7, block 8, Providence Hills.
If you look on page 73, which is also page 11, it shows, you can see Providence Hills north of the development, and it would be pond to pond. And then it would be the western portion of the pond area for Three Lakes would be adjacent to the Providence Hills, and their pool is actually north of their pond.
Right. Okay. Is there,
So their pool is within 140 feet of many houses in Providence Hills.
mhm.
Correct.
Is there, I mean, I don't, I don't live near a pool, so I don't really have a sense of the noise generated. I mean, is that a concern? Is there any kind of noise reduction that could be installed there?
Well,
There will be some trees, if you look at the exhibits that we have submitted, and again, they're conceptual in nature, but that gives you an idea of the number of trees, which we have talked about in the newest revised exhibits. There will be trees scattered in both the reserve areas, and obviously we're specifically referring to Reserve Area A here for the concerns. So that will help buffer some of the noise, and I don't expect there to be a ton of noise. I mean, we all know what a pool sounds like. And I don't think it's going to be anything that bad. I don't think there's going to be a lot of lighting pollution or anything of that nature. And again, in block 4 of our project, Torrey Lakes, there's a 35-foot reserve behind those lots where you get to the boundary line. Same thing for Providence Hills. There's plenty of buffer there, in my opinion.
and I mean, if you look at other subdivisions, Yorktown, the most expensive houses in the entire Yorktown subdivision are within 120 feet of the pool.
Well, not anymore. The more expensive ones are further east of there. And, you
Well,
know,
as we probably all know, lakefront, waterfront property, I'm not talking about a pool, I'm talking about these ponds. That's some of the most expensive property, and we're not talking oceanfront property, but people want to be next to parks. Some people do, some people don't, in greenbelts. Some people like more privacy because they don't want people walking around and stuff, but a lot of people like that and enjoy that. And those do tend to be, more valuable, just like cul-de-sac lots tend to be more valuable many times. So it depends on what you're after, what you're looking for. But they can actually certainly add value to the subdivision and the lots around it for the people that would enjoy that type of thing.
I would like to address the fact of the buffer. That really was a good layer that you brought up, because I'm working on a situation right now where things needed to have been looked at a little closer. That has to do with the buffer. And I really have concerns with that close proximity. Because if you've got a pool, you've got a playground, you're going to have families, you're going to have children screaming, and trees. I have a hard time with trees being the buffer because, one, it takes a while for them to grow. Two, who's going to maintain them? What's going to happen after the developer leaves and the trees die? Yes, it falls to the HOA. I get that. But I think we really need to look at that buffer right now as we're sitting here in order to protect neighbors that are going to be there. You know, kids are going to holler and scream, and I enjoy hearing them. You know, so we have to think of everything that's going to be going on where all the amenities are.
Well, good question, Kay. So, Mr. Terrell, thinking along with Councilor Lynn's comments, the pond in Reserve A, do you guys plan on putting a fountain in the middle to kind of create some ambient white noise, or is that going to be a silent pond?
Oh, it will be. Yes, you're correct. We'll have an aerator in there.
Reserve A and Reserve B.
Yes, both ponds will have aerators in them and fountains, that type of thing, sure. And that helps, for sure.
I don't know if that makes you feel better, Councilor Lynn, but the sound of water running is usually more pleasing than kids screaming in the back. Maybe we'll be wearing masks forever and you won't hear them as much. You just never know.
Well, I love the sound of water. There's just a lot of variables when it comes to maintenance and things of that nature.
Yeah, agreed.
I think they did a really good job of matching reserve to reserve because that was something we hadn't really noticed at the very beginning. So I think I give you guys, bravo to that, and then having the pond being further back and the pool towards the front of that.
We were trying to match, obviously, the pond that's existing. We don't want to do a lot of extra grading and try to, reinvent the wheel. So that kind of told us where the pond needed to be generally centered. Again, it's also the lowest point topographically speaking. There's also an outflow under Harvard that Providence Hills, as well as us, will be going through. So that kind of dictated that. And again, that's just, where the logical place to put the pool house and the playground is where we're showing them. That just is where really it works the best based on what's existing and what we're trying to achieve from an amenity standpoint.
Could we do something that's a little more solid than trees?
Well, we can't do much because there's a pipeline easement there. You can't plant anything in the pipeline easement. That's the same thing that Providence Hills is dealing with, except they're dealing with a different pipeline easement. And I mean, some of this is PUD stuff that was not in, but this is a preliminary plat deal we're talking about now. These are things, some of the stuff we're talking about in terms of these buffers is more to my way of thinking, and Marseille certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but this is something that we should probably talk about more in the PUD because that was nothing was really brought up about any more buffering than we show, because we went far past where we originally were going to go in terms of amenities and trees and things of that nature, and we did everything we were asked to do. And we've committed to a certain number of trees and the general location where we're showing them. So I think we're doing everything we can. And again, like I said, there's a 50-foot pipeline easement on our property as well as on Providence Hills, and you can't plant anything in there. You can't put a fence in there or anything else.
And if I could just pipe back in, we do get noise complaints from various, like Councilor Lynn's talking about a gym. We've had noise complaints about Riverwalk. But I'm looking at these subdivisions like Valley View subdivisions, Providence Hills subdivision, Town subdivision, Dutcher's Crossing subdivision, all have houses literally within 20 feet of the actual pool. And since I've been here, I have never heard a noise complaint from neighbors in an HOA related to the noise from the pool. So I don't know. I understand that that's a potential concern, but it's nothing that I've ever heard in the complaints that I've been here in the last 5 years when we've had these pools that are literally 20 feet away from people's houses. So
They know what they're buying when they buy right there.
That's the key. They're buying there, not necessarily allowing someone to build next to it.
But the people that bought in Providence Hills bought right next to that.
Right.
Yeah, I think they're probably comparable distances. I mean, it's probably maybe, I don't know, 100 or so feet difference. So I mean, I think it's okay. And if you're making an effort to plant trees there, you know, I would just, you know, really emphasize that and do whatever you can there. But I mean, I think we're probably okay.
Mayor, I would suggest they just consult with Councilor Lynn and Chris Stroud on what are the best trees for sound deadening.
They're good at that. They're good at that.
Those are our tree experts. And if I may, while I'm speaking, Mrs. Hilton, can you please tell us what the vote tally was at the Planning Commission for the preliminary plat? I didn't see it in the documentation.
Thank you, Councilor Box. It was 7-0-0.
Did you note any significant debate in the packet? I didn't see that either.
No, sir, there was not any significant debate.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, Mr. Mayor, before you ask, unless there's any discussion, I'm comfortable in making a motion to approve
I'll
the
second
preliminary plat for Tory Lakes, item number 7 on the agenda.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this? Okay, in that case, let's vote.
Murray,
No.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
No,
Mayor Lee.
I'm muted. Yes. All right, motion carries. Let me scroll back up to my here. That brings us to item 8. Request approval of a proposal for architectural, civil engineering, structural engineering, and mechanical, plumbing, and electrical engineering design services for a new central fire station with GS Helms and Associates LLC in Jenks, Oklahoma. The total amount of $230,000. Funds for same are requested to be appropriated in the amount of $78,500 from the 2002 GO bond account code 25252-5392 and $151,500 from the 2006 GO bond account code 26252-5392 fund balances. Mr. Carr, looks like this is your
Yes, it does. Mr. Mayor and members of council, on your agenda packet, page 81, this is a proposal from GS Helms and Associates, and I apologize that in the text, because of cut and paste, I didn't remove the terminology in the memo that said for a new community / senior center. It should have said new central fire station in that place, but all of these services are the same for both the jack and the central fire station. The costs for the services are calculated at 7% of the estimated or preliminarily estimated construction budget of $3 million. So when you look at that, that would be $210,000. But we've also included in this approximately $20,000 for doing surveying and geotechnical for this. When you combine this and the jack design that is going on simultaneously of $280,000, both of these would come together to be $510,000. They're both fairly related to each other, since preliminarily it looks like they're going to go in the same general vicinity. across from from City Hall. And part of the discussion that we'd had when the proposal came before you for the jack design was that the fire station would be torn down, demolished, and a parking lot would go in. That's being handled under the budget for the jack, although it could go in any direction. It's important to remember at this point in time that this is design services, and the purpose behind it is so we can get a better idea of what the actual construction costs will end up being for the public in case it goes to a bond issue. Then we have better numbers for both of those projects that are being designed simultaneously. So we're recommending that you approve this proposal from GS Helms and Associates. It's coming out of two already existing bond issues, and we have the monies available within those bond funds. If you have any specific questions about what may go on during the design, Greg Helms is signed in, so he may be able to answer those questions for you. But I'd be glad to answer anything that I can.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carr or Mr. Helms, or any otherwise any other comments?
Got a question for clarity. These proposed amounts, are they proposed amounts, cap amounts, or estimates?
No, what Greg had stated was that they're proposed based on what we know today. But if the cost of construction ends up going up, then he will modify that. But if the costs go down, he'll also modify it in that direction also.
Thank you.
Question for you, Mr. Carr or Mr. Shrout. And historically speaking, and just off your memory, how often has past councils approved engineering services and studies like this and preliminary designs, and then these projects do not come to fruition? Anything off the top of your head?
Very rarely. I mean, we usually go to the place where we're going to go do design, and then the projects will be constructed afterwards. The question we still have to resolve once the designs of both of these facilities are done is, where are we going to fund it from? That still is going to have to come back to you with a recommendation from staff on where funding could come from.
Other than funding decisions, what would council see in the future regarding a fire station? Would we be asked to approve the conceptual designs, or do we simply have to vote on where the money comes from?
What we've been doing with most of our larger projects here recently is we're doing conceptual designs and bringing it back to council for approvals, so before we move forward into the detail. So you'll get a chance to see that, and then most likely the final design also before it goes out for bid.
Very well. Thank you, sir. I don't have any more questions, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm glad we're taking a look at this. I think this is much needed for our fire department there. In many ways, the building there is not adequate, was not intended for being used as a fire station. So also safety concerns as far as trucks coming out of that alleyway, running their sirens without a light there to guide them out or to prepare the traffic for their arrival there. So I think there's a lot of good things about having this there. It seems like they'd be good neighbors with the jack over there. So happy we're working on this. With that, entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we approve item number 8 on the agenda.
I will second the motion.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes, sorry.
Lynn,
Yes.
Mayor
Yes.
Thank you for using the term jack, everybody.
Oh, I've learned that lesson.
I'm gonna make sure we get the branding right. All right, that brings us to item 9, request to approve a resolution number 702, a resolution amending the annual appropriations by $78,500 in account number 252525392, 2002 GEO Bond Fund Building and Improvements, and $151,500 in account number 262525392, 2006 GEO Bond Fund Building and Improvements for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020, for architecture and engineering design services for a new central fire station with GS Helms and Associates LLC in the amount of $230,000. Any
I make a
questions?
motion to approve resolution number 702.
Thank you. Was there a second?
Second.
All right, let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Mayor
Yes. Item 10, request to accept the FY 2018-2019 audit report prepared by Arledge and Associates. Mr. Sauceda, welcome.
Mayor, members of council, you should have received your fiscal year 19 audit report in your packets, and it was also emailed to you. In the first page, or page 1 or page 95, you'll see a letter from Arledge, our auditors, where they issued a unmodified opinion on our financial statements. This is basically a clean opinion that our financial statements are presented fairly without any material misstatements. And also the last page of the audit also is a letter from Arledge and their opinion on our internal controls. They did not find any material weaknesses or any significant deficiencies in our internal controls. So again, a clean opinion on that. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
So does it say, am I reading it properly on that page 89, where it says there was $89,000 that the invoices were not deemed payable at year end? So what does that refer to?
So this is throughout the fiscal year, and in the budget, we work off of a cash basis. So a dollar in, a dollar out gets recorded in the time that it happens. So in order to comply with GASB and GAAP, the cash statements are then converted into pretty much a full accrual system. And we have our accounting consultants, Crawford and Associates, help us convert the cash statements into accrual statements. And in doing that, there are some invoices that, if it has a June 30th date or before that weren't captured in the numbers,
Okay.
That's what they're pointing out.
So a lag time.
Exactly. And the thing is, in the grand scheme of things, we're talking about $90,000 in a budget or over the city that has millions and say like $20 million.
Okay.
So it's a very insignificant
Okay.
adjustment that we just decided to pass on the adjustment.
All right. I appreciate you explaining that. Thank you.
Sure.
Good question. Anyone else?
Just some highlights. I know throughout the year we get questions on our debt. You can find some of that information and descriptions in here, starting on page 42 of the actual book, but page let's see. I think starting on page 134, This lists all of the geo bonds on the city side, all the revenue notes on the JPWA, and also the aquarium. So if you're ever curious on any of that, any of the debt issuance from the city, public works, or aquarium, you can find that here. Capital assets, also a couple of pages before that. So if there are any other questions.
None for me, but I really appreciate all the work that went into this. I know this is a big project that you're juggling while you're preparing the budget, other things too. So thank you for all that. Looks really good.
And I might just go ahead and point out, I pointed this out in the aquarium meeting, but one of the main pages that I look at is page 5, which is changes in net position. It's table 2, and that has the revenues for each fiscal year, and then the expenses for each fiscal year for governmental activities, which I think Robert might have stated would be city, and then business type activities, which would be the JPWA and the Aquarium Authority. And then you have it totaled out, and so you can see kind of how we're doing. I know we go through this budget, and sometimes we see a deficit finance through fund balance, but we frequently say we don't think we're going to need it. In order for us to budget this or to balance this budget, we need to put that on paper. And so I think you can see how well we actually do with our revenues and expenditures in that total column. So that's one of the main tables that I look at, to see how we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Good job. Thanks for putting us in a good spot there.
And also just starting on 157, this is pretty much listing every single fund that we have within the city, JPWA, and the aquarium. So if you're ever wondering where the money is hidden, this kind of tells you, gives you a breakdown of each fund, its positioned, its fund balance. And if you kind of scroll through this, you have the balance sheet and the income statement for the city, JPWA, and aquarium, and each and every fund that we have.
So grab a shovel, folks, and start digging for those coffee cans. This is the map.
As he put, where the funds are hidden.
Right. All right. Are there any motions to approve item 10?
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. Item 11, request to approve resolution number 701 in support of application for Tulsa Community River Corridor Connections Project Build Grant, approving and ratifying letter of support. Mr. Shroud, is this yours?
Sure. So Rich Briere, who's the executive director of INCOG, approached me a few months ago, and he was talking about the low water dam project and kind of the trouble that the city of Tulsa and city of Jenks have been having in getting the endowment funded. Originally the thought was that the Creek Nation would fund that endowment, but we have not received a commitment from them. And so as a part of the public vote back in 2015 or 16 for the low water dam, it said that we had to have all the funds identified, not necessarily collected, but at least identified to build and maintain the dam in perpetuity by the end of the calendar year 2020. And so obviously we're in the calendar year 2020, and so the heat's on to try to find the money for that endowment. And Rich Briere said that this build grant, that's a federally administrated grant, there's something like $1 billion available. And there's all these parameters, but it's generally for transportation. And he had indicated that he thought that the trail system and the bank improvements related to the low water dam project were a really good candidate for this build grant. And he said that the city of Des Moines received $25 million last year, for a similar trail system around their, I guess, some sort of low water dam in the river that goes through downtown Des Moines. And he said that the state of Oklahoma has not received build grant funds in the last couple award cycles. And so he said that he thought that we had a pretty good chance with the city of Tulsa and the city of Jenks partnering along with INCOG. INCOG will take care of that. They have taken care of the application. That maybe if we can get $20 million for the shoreline improvements, that could offset some of the money that we need for the endowment. And so he talked to me about it, and I said, sure, we're in favor of this. And I think the deadline was maybe last week, and INCOG did all the work. I mean, all we had to do is kind of say that we agreed and have the mayor sign this letter that they wrote for us. So I think this is a pretty exceptional opportunity where INCOG has done all this work, and we actually, could be the beneficiary of a large portion of this grant. But we did have to commit a certain amount of money to as matching funds. But the great thing is we've already allocated $16.7 million of vision funding for this project, and this $2.8 million, I think that's the amount. All that is just saying, sure, we have this $2.8 million to go towards this. We were already going to spend that $2.8 million on this project, and so we're really thankful for Rich Briere for identifying this opportunity. And this resolution that's before you is basically just saying, yes, we agree that if we do receive the grant, we will expend these matching funds that we already have allocated to this project.
Chris, this language in 701 was drafted by INCOG.
No, the resolution was drafted by us. It's Exhibit A that the city of Tulsa signed the same document. Senator Inhofe has signed a letter. INCOG has signed a letter, and so this is kind of a uniform agreement that we're all in this together. And so it's a pretty exciting, and especially since Senator Inhofe is personally signing a letter as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's a kind of a twofer for the low water dam project and the trail system to the west of the river there that would go toward both of those projects. So really is a great opportunity.
Does he have a time frame for when they are when they usually approve this? I guess my question is, if this doesn't go through, do we have a backup plan at this point?
They plan to announce or award these grants in September of this year.
Okay, so it'd still give us a little bit of time to scramble.
Yeah, and I think that, the goal, I won't speak for the president, but I think the president wants these grants to be awarded before November.
I like that. That was good thinking. Thank you.
Yeah,
We've been quarantined. I don't know what day it is anymore, let alone month.
So are we building a wall along the west bank of the river, or are we building a trail system?
But we're hopefully building a big moat.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
If you really want to get it done, there's a way to do it.
Yeah, I got a shovel. Let's get started.
I move to approve request resolution 701.
Second that. Item number 11.
All right, thank you. Let's vote on that.
Murray,
Yes.
Isabel,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Mary Lee.
Yes. Do appreciate that partnership with NCOG. This is one of those times where it pays off all the time. This is a shining example of that. That brings us to other business, city manager's report.
Yeah, just real quick, you have the department update in your packet, but there's two things that I wanted to just briefly touch on. The first is the utility billing window was closed somewhere in March, I guess, and we have numerous ways where people can pay their utility bill. You can pay by check in the mail. You can drop the payment off at City Hall, and we have two different drop boxes. or you can pay online. There was a fee associated with that. We eliminated that fee. And then you can also pay by direct deposit, where we just take your bill every month out of your checking account. And so we found that people were able to figure this out pretty quick. We don't have any more delinquent accounts than we normally have, and I think it's been a success. So we've had 2 billing cycles where people can pay. I think there's 4 or 5 different ways other than coming in person. And so we evaluated it and think that we're going to go ahead and open up the utility billing window tomorrow. But I think long term, it's something to think about. We all have utility bills, whether it's electric, gas, if you have cable, if you have internet, you have a credit card bill. And I can't think of any other bill where you go and physically hand someone cash to pay your bill. All these other utilities have gone to, they offer 4 or 5 different options like we do, but they don't offer an in-person. I think it requires a lot of staff time if people are showing up, each month to pay this bill. If we did eliminate the online payment fee, then I don't know why we would be any different than other utilities, but it is something to think about moving into the future long term. Do we want to have a utility billing window, and what are the benefits? Because it costs money to staff that. We have full-time employees that stand there waiting for people to come pay their bill, and so that'll be something to think about in the future. But just FYI, we are opening up the utility billing window, and that'll mean that basically the only thing that isn't open yet is the community room. Throughout this entire COVID process since mid-March, we have 200 employees. About maybe 15 have been working from home. The rest have been showing up every day. So whether it be aquarium employees, public works employees, fire, police, all of finance department, HR, payroll, building inspections, engineering, the city manager's office, everyone's been showing up. Some of those people that, frankly, like Katie is communications director, producing a ton of content, has been out in the field. We've had some other people working from home where it makes sense that they don't need to come in. And so we're pretty much totally back to normal at this point. And that brings us to the annual fireworks celebration. Los Cabos usually organizes that and funds the actual fireworks. Because they've been closed for the last, well, not closed, but had an extremely reduced revenue because of takeout only. They are unable to come up with the cash to fund the fireworks show this year. And so it's something that I talked about with the budget committee, and that I would recommend that the city and maybe jointly with the aquarium take on funding the fireworks show this year, and see if we can't solicit some, potential, maybe some small donations from local businesses. We think it would be, we were looking for something to celebrate, and we think having a fireworks show would certainly be a great celebration. It's a great event. It's really wonderful for our small businesses. And, I talked with the fire and police chief. They think that we can safely socially distance outside. And I talked with the fireworks company that's done this for the last 12 years. I've talked about the budget. He's coming in tomorrow, and we're going to continue discussing this and discuss a contract, and potentially for $40,000. That's what the fireworks show is every year. And he said if something were to come up that the fireworks show would have to be canceled on July 4th, we would be able to have it at some later date in the year. So whether it's weather or whether it's COVID related, if it does get postponed, our money is good for a fireworks show some other time. And I'm excited about this possibility. And I think that, we haven't talked about it yet. We don't want to get businesses' hopes up yet without having a final contract, but I think this would be a good expenditure of funds for the morale of the city and for the economic benefit of local businesses.
I agree with that 100% because Tulsa has went back, as you all know, they're not going to do theirs till Labor Day. So this would give us 100% chance of helping our businesses.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'll be good, and I'm glad you're looking into that.
And Marseille, are we going to have to get a permit to have fireworks? I want to do it right.
Do we know how to get one?
Well, we will need the public event permit process, and that's been started. But I know that Councilor Isbell is just trying to give us a hard time, but yeah, we'll get all the paperwork filled out, and you guys will approve the special event. So hopefully you approve it.
I will.
I'm all in.
Put it on our agenda and go through the application process. We'll no promises. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for looking into that. And thanks for all the, I know it's been a challenge with having staff, some staff working from home and some staff not. And I know that that's taken extra effort on your part and staff's part. So thanks for that.
Plus being a new dad, okay?
That too.
Yeah, that's actually more difficult. We tried to tell you.
You're learning, aren't you? Mayor can help you out.
Oh, he'll watch Dean?
For a price. All
No,
right.
give you support. Give you support. It
Yeah.
passes.
I've given them a few ideas here or there. I don't know how helpful they've been. All right. Well, thank you. Any other comments before we move on to the monthly chamber report?
I think is that in?
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
Get unmuted.
Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Bojang,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Would you all mind if we took just a 5-minute breather between this and the JPWA meeting?
Love that.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
So moved.
Okay. We'll be back in 5.
First JAA meeting was a bit brutal, huh?
It was long.
Somewhat uncomfortable discussions.
I thought it was really good.
You sure you did? Wink, wink.
I got to a certain page and then there weren't any more pages after that. And I was sitting here in the blind and I pushed the button on my iPad and I lost everybody's pictures but mine. And I'm like, what the heck? And I sent a note to Kerry and he's like, oh, we'll do this, do this. I'm like, yeah, all right.
So super serious question for all of you. How many of you collect these things? And if you don't, would be willing to let me come and gather them up?
What is it?
Are they?
It's the bind it clips for your,
Oh, I love my binder clips.
Oh, I do too. I
I
love
don't have
those.
anything to use them for, Corey, but
Well,
I
yeah.
like them.
Report.
I have a friend, a colleague who's a little more creative than I am. We're going to build a sculpture out of these, and it's going to be,
How fun.
if it turns out well enough, it'll be donated to some artistic entity in town I'm not aware of, but it's remarkable what you can do with tens of thousands of these things.
Yeah, I'm still holding on to mine. They're still binding my papers in a big
What?
pile.
I thought you guys threw these away right afterwards.
No, I actually refer to them sometimes. It's amazing.
I only keep the last 60 days worth, and then I purge.
I know, you always would leave her to have them shred them. Well,
Because you go online and pull them down too.
Yeah.
but I make notes.
Well, no, that's good. That's a good point. I try to too.
In the previous, okay,
I'll be on the lookout for extra clips there. I'll set them aside.
If I
Jumbos,
purge,
any size, but these jumbos are a great start.
Mhm. Okay.
Well, you're when you fade your background like that and you put it towards your screen, you can't.
yeah.
My background's not faded.
Well, I know, but you changed your background.
They did something that almost like green screens it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Boy.
that's not Corey. We're going to make that part of the background too. There you go.
You go.
there it
you go.
is.
Now, I'm like, I couldn't see
now.
what it was.
Oh, you're right. I just noticed from the YouTube thing that you can't see what I'm holding.
I couldn't get on the YouTube. I've restricted myself.
That's crappy. There you go.
Sometimes people wave a piece of paper, like an agenda in front of their page, when they're flipping the page, it makes it look like their face is disappearing. It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy. Something.
Hmm.
All right. Well, thanks for indulging the break, folks. I could hear my daughter sort of shuffling off to bed there, and it was a good opportunity to go give her a hug.
Oh, that was.
I thought you had to use the restroom.
Well, I squeezed that
You know, it's okay.
in. All right. Well, should we get going with JPWA?
Sure.
Okay. We will call this meeting to order of the Jenks Public Works Authority, Tuesday, May 19th, 2020, 7:44 p.m. Let's call roll.
Murray,
Here.
Isbell,
Here.
Fox,
Here.
Dyke,
Here.
OJ,
Here.
Lynn,
Here.
Charlie.
Here. Thanks for being here, everyone. First order of business, consideration and appropriate action relating to requests for approval of the consent agenda. Any motions or comments on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, thank you. Let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Chair Lee.
Yes. We will pull item 2 and move on to item 3, appropriating $325,000 for the purchase of property at 131st and Yale for the purpose of a future bridge and authorizing the city manager to execute the purchase contract. Mr. Trout.
Chair and all members of the authority, if you recall I think it was December 2018, the Public Works Authority purchased about 5 to 6 acres immediately north of this property at the end of, I can't remember the name of that it's a small road, but in anticipation of a future bridge, the JPWA owns something like 15 to 20 acres immediately north of that property that it slopes down a hill, and then there's the railroad, and then there's the river. And so we've now acquired a significant amount of land, and we want to continue acquiring land going south. And so this is the next piece of property, and Michael Hannum is the owner of this property. It's just kind of funny. I mean, he owns the nursery, and he's donated a lot of trees to the city over the last couple of years, but he owns this house, and we've been talking with him for years now about the possibility of acquiring this property. And Chris Robinson worked hard to negotiate the terms. And so I think this is a little bit larger than 1 acre and will continue. Now we'll have, again, we're putting together a significant amount of land for a future bridge, and staff will continue to evaluate other properties in this area for potential purchase. So this is the item authorizing us to execute the purchase contract, and the next item is simply appropriating the amount of money needed to execute that contract.
Thank you. Any questions on that?
Yeah, Chris, is this South 30th Place or South 30th Avenue East? I know what the packet says, but I looked it up earlier on Zillow and a number of sites, and it always shows something different, but I don't know, maybe I'm seeing things.
This is South 30th Place is what I believe.
So it should be South 30th Place is what I think it should be, but the packet says South 30th Avenue East.
Well, let me look.
I'm not, as long as it's rectified, I don't really care. I pretty much know that as South 30th Place. And if we're going to execute a purchase contract, obviously we need to get the address right. You know that.
This is Chris Robinson. According to the county assessors, 30th Avenue.
Yeah,
That's what the legal description says.
Yeah, the legal description is 12902 South 30th Avenue East.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Google is wrong.
So Google and Zillow and everybody else. Okay. The rest of the world. Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure it was right. Hey, when we bought that land back in 2018, I thought there was a house on it, wasn't there?
There was a house on it, and we had people ready to rent the house. And then when we went and looked at it again, there were some really significant problems with water related to that house. And so we determined it'd be best just to bulldoze the house as opposed to try to spend a bunch of money on the house knowing that it's going to end up being bulldozed anyways someday. And so there's a house on this property that we're recommending that we purchase, but I'm not going to speak to the house like I did last time. We'll see what we want to do if the house is in good enough shape. I mean, I went through the house on the property that we bought 2 years ago, and I thought it was in fine shape. And then a couple months goes by of nobody in it, and we go in there, and there was like mold, black mold, and it was a real problem. I mean, we spent money even thinking, okay, well, let's do an environmental study to see what kind of mold this is and what kind of remediation we need to do. And it was just kind of like, this doesn't make sense to spend money to do all this. So that's why I'm not saying anything about the house on this On this property, we'll take a look, and I'll have a report for you at some later date with what we plan to do with the house.
And the figure of 325,000, how did we come to that figure?
Well, he wanted more than that, and we continued to talk him down. But I'll be honest, it's the least amount that we could get him to release the property for.
Okay.
So, it's a little over 1 acre. I know you'd like to hear me say that we had an appraisal done and we did all this and that, but we didn't.
We'd love to hear you say that.
This is the number, because honestly, it doesn't really matter what a property appraises for if someone's not willing to sell it for that amount.
And okay, and similar to the last purchase, this lot runs parallel to where those the power lines come through.
Correct.
Okay. Are you suggesting that we're going to need to purchase additional properties in the future?
Yes.
Do you make? Okay, how many? All of them? The entire street?
Well, there's.
What about the horse farm?
The horse farm is the only piece left in between this property that we're talking about in 131st Street. But that property owner previously has not wanted to sell. So, there's the potential of the bridge landing, north of this property, and then maybe we can use the PSO property they own. I doubt it, or maybe we decide that the road could curve to the east or curve. We need to acquire those properties to the east, or maybe it curves to the west and uses the PSO property there. But the horse farm is going to be a lot harder than these other two we just purchased.
Well, I think it's exciting that we're continuing to move forward with that vision for a bridge down the way.
Yeah, it's an important piece there.
Okay, so I'll just ask the less obvious question. 9 years from now, if we don't have a bridge, 10, 15 years, if we don't have a vision or a concept for a bridge, we sell this property, what do we do with it?
That's a good question.
Okay. You don't have to answer it. I just was curious if there was a standard thought process for what does the city want to be in the business of being landowners? Should future plans not pan out, what do we do with it, with the land?
We make it a green space, Corey. We've been talking about lots of those.
It is beautiful out there.
Different part of town.
If you haven't been out there, it is really pretty. There's a bluff. It's on a bluff, and so it's kind of like there's an extremely steep decline down to the railroad and then the river. And I mentioned we own the 15 acres north of the 5 acres that's north of the 1 acre that we're talking about purchasing or approving tonight. So I think there's lots of different uses for that property, whether we retain ownership in 10 or 15 years if a bridge doesn't happen, or whether we wish to sell it to a developer or something. But we're still committed to building that bridge, and so we're not contemplating that right now, Councilor Box.
Hey,
Well,
Chris,
go ahead,
you
Councilor.
keep saying 1 acre, but on the memorandum it says 2.5 acres.
Or maybe I'm incorrect. Let me look. It's 2.5 acres.
Okay.
Oh, this deal just got better.
Yeah. It's
Even less
10
per acre.
minutes
We
ago.
go, Chris. Way to make it sound better.
10 minutes ago, we were getting ripped off.
No,
I'd like to say a couple of things about this, if I could please, for a moment. If anybody hasn't been down 151st Street, they actually should drive through there and watch what Bixby's doing. This is a very short distance from Bixby, from 151st, and the development that's taken place there. That's in addition to the future bridge down there. The other thing that Jenks has had a terrible time with, because you remember how we're only, 18 miles from city limits to city limits. We have no land. This will even give us a better opportunity to develop for the city of Jenks. So I can see 3 positive building blocks related to this purchase.
Yeah, I agree entirely.
Yep.
And sort of touching on Councilor Box's question, we had this conversation when we purchased the other piece of property in that area. We can having that money in land is as about as safe as having money in a CD or something like that. So it's not all that risky as far as we're concerned. But I think it'll come in handy for us.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, let's vote on that.
Ari,
Yes.
Isabel,
Yes.
yes. Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Shirley.
Yes. That brings us to other business, general manager's report. What do you say, Mr. Strout?
I believe you have the report in your packet, and I would give up my time for the chamber.
It's very generous of you.
Did we do item number 4 or am I?
I didn't see that either.
Yeah, the resolution.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Move to appropriate that money.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Item 4, request to
Hey.
approve. We'll be right with you, Josh.
This is a sign. We shouldn't do this.
Request to approve resolution number 2020-06, a resolution amending the annual appropriations by $325,000 in account number 59801-5391 JPWA Insurance and Risk Management Fund land for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020 to purchase real property at 12902 South 30th Avenue East.
I motion to approve resolution number 2020-06.
So, second.
All right, thank you. Let's vote.
Ari,
Yes.
Isabel,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Shirley.
Yes. All right, monthly chamber report. Mr. Driscoll, good to see you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I thank and recognize Mr. Strout for yielding his time. It is very appreciated. On the build grant that you applied today, we also submitted a letter of support for that project. So I think that's an exciting opportunity for us. So we're looking forward to hopefully getting some of that worked out. Gonna hit some high points here. If you haven't been following us on our newsletter, website, or Facebook, we have had webinars, Zoom calls. We've been in a lot of contact with a lot of people. I'm beginning to feel like a TV news anchor here lately. I've seen a lot of my face, which I don't really like to see on there. So hopefully we'll be able to do more in-person things soon. Something we have been working a lot with, and I've talked with a number of you about it, is the paycheck protection and idle funds. We continue to work on that. Idle has shifted now where it's primarily solely, I should say, for agricultural use. Paycheck protection, there's still money there, but we're still trying to identify people who can apply. We had a call this afternoon with representatives from our federal delegation about that. Just a number of issues. One of the things that came up was the need for assistance for landlords. I've spoken to a number of developers and commercial landlords here in the community, and they're struggling too. The conversation, I think I talked to the vice mayor about this last week, is basically a third, 3 months has just disappeared of income. They're probably not going to get back. It's more expensive for them to evict somebody than try to replace them than it is to try to move forward. So if we could do something, on the federal side to try to help some of these landlords out, that'd be really, really great. Let's see. Businesses, we're reopening. I think we're starting to see some signs of life, and it's exciting. I've eaten at a couple of restaurants now. I'm still standing here, so that's good news. I will say I've heard from one business that will not be reopening after this. There are a number of factors that went into it, but this is kind of the last gasp when they were closed for the period of time. They just weren't able to quite make it back open again. But they're moving forward to some other concepts, and hopefully we'll see them in the community again soon. Some projects we're working on. I had to give a timeline, but we are incredibly close to launching our economic development website. We've been building it, populating it with properties, data, working on some updated demographics and some interactive content there. So that'll be exciting when we can get that up. Our tourism website, we've been meeting with the aquarium about that and about Sharklahoma, with the state's recent focus on under Lieutenant Governor Pennell on tourism, especially here in Oklahoma, we feel like we've got a great story to tell. Councilor Murray, great to see your cat.
Thank you. Sorry.
But we're also working on Sharklahoma and getting that project launched. I'm beginning to think this has been a dream of mine for the 10 years I've been here, and I'm beginning to think it's a cursed one. Last year we had floods. This year we've got a pandemic. So we'll see what next year holds, I guess. Something we're working on, and we've seen some interesting data nationally, of small businesses, 63% of them heading into this did not have the ability to sell their products online. But of those who could, 34% of their sales came from that. So I think that's going to be something we focus on in the next couple of months, is the best way to provide training to our small businesses to allow them to sell their goods and services online. During this, I worked with a number of them and suggested some less technically sound ways to do it, posting the pictures on Facebook and encouraging people to call them or message them. But I think if we could figure out ways to easily get them a store online and provide that training on a large scale, it'll be good for us. It was mentioned at JAA, we launched the Jenks Good News Network last month. I feel like Councilor Dyke, I don't really know what day it is anymore. I just look at my calendar and decide if it's a pants day or not. But we launched that. We had each video had 7,000 to 8,000 views on that. We had a great partnership with the school, with the city, with the aquarium, with the Jenks Tribune. We had our last episode last Friday, so we really enjoyed that. And I want to take this opportunity again to thank Rob Labor of Jenks Public Schools, who was our editor-in-chief, designer, script writer, programmer, did all the hard work. But it was a really great program, and I think I was able to speak to a number of you. Councilor Lynn and I had a great conversation about the community members making masks, so it was really a great project to do. We're moving forward on Freedom Fest. You guys had the conversation about fireworks in the city council, so we're moving forward with our end of it, and are looking forward to doing what we can to promote it. I think we've got a great opportunity here. Broken Arrow is not doing an Independence Day celebration. Sapulpa has canceled theirs, so we may be one of the one or two still standing in the metro. So I think it's an opportunity for us to kind of give a pep talk, a boost to our businesses and to our residents as well. Staff is, we're all now in the office now. Our last staff member who'd been working remotely is in, so we're still there. If you want to come by, call ahead. Otherwise, we've got the doors locked and you have to knock loudly. But we're looking at phase 3, opening our doors open to the public and planning on in-person programming resuming in July with some social distancing and some attendance caps and some things like that. But unless there are any questions, I yield the remainder of my time back to the chair. Mayor, you're muted.
I did it again. happens to all of us. Great job on the Jenks Good News Network. That went really well, I thought, and brought a smile to my day every week. So really appreciate your work on that. And thanks for all you're doing for the businesses as well. It's very much needed. Any other questions?
Driscoll? Yeah. Question for Mr. Driscoll. Can you give us an update on the Starbucks in town?
We are reaching out to them now to find out what is going on with their opening date.
It's open.
I'm not a coffee drinker, so that the novelty of it is lost on me. But I understand people do like coffee.
It is open. I told them I was so sad I didn't know as a city councilor. He's like, oh, I'll tell our manager. But they were very nice.
But we've got a couple of great coffee establishments in Jenks. We've got Starbucks. We've got Kitsch also has coffee, and Vintage Key Coffee in downtown as well.
And Vintage Key opened today, I saw.
Yeah, she's back up today, and they've got.
Oh, did they? Good.
And Bramble?
Yeah, we've really we've got a great selection of places you can get your caffeine.
That's good to know.
Josh, how about Outlet Mall? Will we start ramping up a little bit more? Have you talked to them at all about that?
I think Chris has better contacts there than I do, but it looks nice.
Continuing to move dirt.
Okay.
They won't let me on site to help, but that's probably for the
I'm
benefit
gonna
of
count
both
the
of us.
dirt. I want to move it faster.
My goodness, that Wilmot Creek channel is pretty big.
Is that what they're having issues with?
Well, I mean, that's just part of their, Wilmot Creek used to run kind of west to east into the river. Now they're rechanneling it so it goes under the train tracks and then south to those lakes and connecting the channel with the lakes. And the channel is just massive, but They're continuing to work on that, and as you can see, they haven't worked on the structures recently, but we anticipate, they don't have a timeline on that, but they'll ramp that back up most likely in the next couple months, if not the fall. And David Simon himself even commented on his earnings call last week. They've closed all their malls throughout the nation, and they're slowly opening them back up. And when he was talking, he pointed out Oklahoma particularly that, as a place where they're going to start moving forward because of our low cases per capita. So, I think the fact that he's aware of our situation is definitely positive.
Thank you, Chris. I always forget there's more than just what's on the surface.
If you drive through the traffic circle there and look to your right on the south end, you can see the work they're doing in the creek, and it's something to behold. It's impressive.
Yeah, I know Wilmot Creek can't be as deep as my alley.
Kayland Lake is
had to
impressive.
say that.
Lots of bodies of water in Ward 1. We always appreciate more options to entertain ourselves.
Very good. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. And yeah, before we adjourn, I just wanted to say a couple words. We have a member of staff who lost her husband today after a battle with cancer, and just wanted everyone to be thinking about her and the family there. Really sweet person. Sad news.
Is it Malia?
Yeah, yes, and she put it on Facebook, so I don't feel uncomfortable saying that. But
I had just
keep her in prayer. So with that, are there any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
All right, let's vote.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Shirley.
Yes, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good evening.
Thank you all.
Hi, guys.